Welcome to Storytime with Miss Melange. The next title that we're going to read today is called Bread for Words, a Frederick Douglass Story written by Shana Keller. I knew where I was born, not when. It was Tuckahoe, Maryland. I lived free as a bird near the bay in a small cabin with Grandma. There wasn't a whole lot to do inside our cramped cabin, so I called to the birds, the frogs, the cats, and the dogs. I chirped and barked and scrabbled until even the animals couldn't tell if I was one of their own. One day, Grandma told me I would have to leave. Why? I asked. We belong to old master, she said. We are slaves. What does that mean? I thought I belonged to Grandpa. They won't teach you a thing but to work, and you won't have a choice. But why am I a slave? I did not want to be told when to work, where to work, how to work, and not have a choice. Grandma was still silent on the day we left the cabin early in the morning, when we walked 12 long miles on a day swamped with heat and bugs to a place called the Great House Farm. When we arrived, children ran out to see me. They surrounded me, laughing and teasing me so. Then Grandma left without saying goodbye. I met my brothers and sisters at the great house, but I didn't know them well. Without Grandma, I was too sad to play. Then I met Daniel. He lived in the great house. We hunted and hiked and fished together. Daniel occasionally shared his cakes with me. He showed me the great house and all the grand rooms inside, including his. Except for the color of our skin, it was hard to know why we were different. Daniel was not a slave. He wasn't born into it. At night, Daniel slept in a warm bed with a full belly. I had no bed. On the coldest nights, I slept with a bag used to carry corn. It wasn't long enough to cover my feet, so I put it over my head. I didn't have enough to eat or enough clothes to stay warm. I didn't even know my age, but Daniel knew his. When his tutor came, he taught Daniel to read and write and speak. I wanted to learn too, but Grandma was right. They didn't give me a choice. I was not old enough to work in the field. I was told to clean the yards, keep the birds out of the garden, and drive the cows. No matter how bad I wanted to learn to read and write, it wouldn't teach me a thing. It was illegal, they said. Unlawful, unsafe. Why? I walked like them. I talked like them. I walked and talked exactly like them. I showed them I could. Is that why I was sent to Baltimore, far away from my brothers and sisters? I left the plantation the same way Grandma did, without saying goodbye. In Baltimore, I lived with Mr. Hugh Auld, kin to Old Master, and his wife, Mrs. Sophia. I was told to take care of little Thomas, their young son. City life was different from plantation life. There was plenty of food for me to eat and warm, clean clothes for me to wear. At night, I now had a good straw bed with covers. Mrs. Sophia was kind at first. She knew as little of slavery as I did. When she read to Thomas from the Bible, I followed along. To my surprise, she taught me what no one else would, my ABCs. She taught me how to spell next. I felt proud to know 3- and 4-letter words. She was proud of me too. But when Mr. Oz saw what I could do, anger caught a hold of him. He should know nothing but to do as he is told, he said. If you teach Freddie how to read, there would be no keeping him. He forbade Mrs. Sophia from teaching me. From that moment, I understood the pathway from slavery to freedom. If I learned to read, I can loosen the chains of bondage. I couldn't give up, but how would I learn now that I had lost my teacher? As Thomas grew older, I was told to carry his books and walk him to school. An idea came to me. I met a lot of hungry boys on the streets. The boys were between 9 and 12 years old. Was I as old as them? I remembered how I hated the pinches of hunger in my belly. This time, my hunger was different from theirs. When I was sent on errands, I always took my book with me, and I took extra bread. When I saw the boys on the streets, I offered them bread for words. It worked. With their help at different times and in different places, I finally learned to read. But to break free from slavery, I knew I had to learn how to write next. A new idea came to me in the shipyard. I watched the ship carpenters carve letters into pieces of wood to show which part of the ship it would be used for. I soon learned the names of these letters. They carved L for larboard or left side, F for forward, S for starboard, the right side, and A for aft, the stern. With a lump of chalk, I wrote on fences, brick walls, and pavement. I copied these four-letter words until I could write them from memory. To learn the rest of the alphabet, I challenged those boys on the street who I knew could write. I said I could write as well as them. They didn't believe me. I carefully wrote the letters I had practiced. Beat that! Unable to resist my game, they wrote the letters they knew. I paid close attention to the ones I didn't. At home, when Thomas finished with his copybooks, they were set aside and forgotten. I used the book to trace the letters again and again until I could make them all without looking at the books. Mr. Odd was right. There would be no keeping me. My chains had been broken. And at the end of this story is a summary of Frederick Douglass' life and the author's note. I learned so much from reading this story. I hope you did too. And so consider a new fact about Frederick Douglass' life that you learned from this inspiring book. If you like this story, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, so you could be notified of new stories. Thank you for watching. Bye.